Writing horror is a lot like modern dating. It seems like all you should have to do is wave your fingers around to make some magic happen, but when you finally sit down to get to work, all you're left with is anxiety, disappointment, and a lackluster monster staring at you from across the table as you plot a way to bail on the check.
If you've never screamed at the sight of a plastic bag in the wind, then I doubt you've ever been truly terrified. But maybe you've stared at a blank page, waiting for a story idea to pop into your head as your heart rate creeps up and up and up. Fear is visceral, universal, and a blast to watch when it's not happening to you. But then why is writing horror so difficult that it seems like only one guy even writes in the genre? How can you make a great story while still giving people heart attacks? And what are the tricks of the genre that can make your story not just horrifying, but meaningful? To answer those questions, we're going to teach you 3 strategies for writing effective horror by looking at It, one of the few movies that not only kept me away from sewer grates for several days, but also delivered one of the most impactful messages about childhood, guilt, and friendship in modern storytelling. By the end of this video, you'll be able to create a terrifying monster, manipulate genres so that your story doesn't feel like it's beating the horror note to death, and figure out how to make your story meaningful as well as nightmare fuel. Reminder that if you are serious about writing a book that sells, subscribe to the channel. I put out stuff nearly every week to teach you how to write phenomenal stories. And with that, let's get started. When brainstorming qualities that make up a good monster, I just think of my ex. But we can't all be so lucky as to have a murderous clown as a previous abusive partner, so we're gonna have to get creative. Whether your monster is an alien creature, dead guy, or an alive guy, they still have some commonalities amongst them. Monsters are overpowering, smart, and deceptive, but that doesn't separate them much from every other villain. Well, what if we make them extra powerful and smart and stuff? That just gets us Thanos or Homelander. No, if we really stop and think about it, one of the things that makes us scared of the monster is the same thing that makes me afraid of Starbucks and Dollar General, and that's that they seem to be everywhere. The clown from It is eerily in a bunch of scenes, which is one part fun Easter egg and one part creepy as shit. While It explicitly places the monster in many of its scenes, the feeling in any horror story should be one of nowhere is safe. Not under the covers, not in the room full of chainsaws, not the sewer where the Screaming Children Symphony are rehearsing their musical. Even when the monster is not present. Scratch that. Especially when the monster is not present, you want your audience to have a sense that it could pop into the scene at any time. But this alone doesn't exactly make a horrific monster. At best, we've probably made a great villain for a thriller or a stalker ex-girlfriend. Now look, would a clown materializing in my basement bathroom give me a heart attack on the toilet? Yes. Hell yes. But that would be a really weird, probably French, movie if that's all that happened. To make this a story, and more importantly a horror story, the clown has to want something, and that something, most often, is the life of our antagonist. Horror boils down to staying alive, paying a price for something bad you did, and cardio. Basically like religion. The monster really puts the chutzpah on these 3 factors by constantly checking to see just how bad our hero wants to live. For It, this means constantly trying to eat their faces, hiding in the scariest home ever built before moving to downtown New York, and forcing this group of tweens to socialize. For your stories, this can be as simple as chasing them with scissors or counting down how many days until their phone bill comes due. But you need to give a crushing sense that the walls are closing in, time is running out, or both, and that your hero's life gets to go away if they don't figure out how to beat the monster in time. This inherently adds a layer to good horror stories, which is that the monster, as well as how to beat it, has a mystery that needs to be solved. Freddy needs to be dragged into reality, a boy's soul needs to be retrieved from hell so that no new neighbors move in, and Jason can only die when Jamie Lee Curtis refuses to do another sequel. For It, part of the fun is in figuring out what this shape-shifting sewer clown actually is. Is there a way to survive it? And, most importantly, is there a way to beat his tutu-wearing bitch-ass back to hell? By setting up a mysterious monster, you create your story's plot. Our heroes have a problem that needs solved before they die. It's literally the craziest Sudoku puzzle you're ever going to play, but it's also what separates a straightforward slasher from a quality horror film. What riddle needs solved to beat the monster? Or, in the case of It, what do each of our heroes need to overcome within themselves before they can take on these sick dance moves? If you want some help on visualizing how you might set this up in your own story, there's a free plot planner down in the description. Once you have an idea of how you lay out your monster within the story, we can move on to the next section. I like my clown with a little drop of murder, and originally I was going to try to sing that, but I barely have a voice, and I'm tone deaf. So anyway, horror, even the generic kind, has a hard time standing on its own. Most horror stories have an aspect of thrillers, and, as we've just discovered, mystery. It's hard to unlive a bunch of people and not have at least one of them say, "Why?" But then why don't we throw in some chuckles and a few lessons about growing up while we're solving those mysteries and postponing a stress-induced aneurysm? So the big question is, why would we do that? Well, the same way an action movie can numb its audience with too many explosions, a horror film can exhaust its audience with endless screams and stab sessions. You need to give your audience room to breathe, not only for obvious medical reasons, but also so they feel the extreme contrast between comfort and suffocating. People get used to a constant pressure, but they really notice change, whether it's good or bad. What comes next is a big consideration as to how we go about allowing the audience to breathe. Do we let them laugh, mislead them, set off their pacemaker? The options are limitless, but It executed this break from the horror by incorporating a coming-of-age story into the fabric of the main horror. While It is a horror film about alien clowns, it's also about kids growing up and learning how to confront their fears, whether they're personal insecurities or tangible threats like abusive fathers or the craziest school bully I've ever seen. Like really, were bullies this bad at other schools? Holy sh! Anyway, what made It truly memorable and distinct from the original book and adaptation was the way it focused on each character's need to grow up, face their fears, and how the monster emphasized this need to grow within each of them. To do this, it uses the 3 phases of the horror story, and then it stuffs this coming-of-age comedy into the mystery section like some mismatched Russian doll set, and damn if it didn't tickle my terror bone in some new and satisfying ways. Not only do we get a break from all the screaming, but we get time to bond with each of the characters, see ourselves in their struggles to fit in and grow up, while also laughing at some of the most accurate dialogue I've ever seen in a movie. Now, I'm gonna level with you. This setup is unique to It, because not every story is about a bunch of kids overcoming the literal embodiment of fear and beating John Wayne Gacy back to hell. But every horror story is about a hero confronting their own inner demons. When writing a horror, consider what your hero regrets most and how their monster can emphasize that regret or fear. This regret might be a romantic partner, a failed friendship, or a previous fight for survival. But all offer opportunities to incorporate new genres into your horror while also leaving some room for a moment of comedy. But remember, however you choose to blend this new aspect into your horror, our monster still does one primary thing, which is the focus of our final section. So we've got our omnipresent scary monster mixed in with some laughs, and maybe a new genre thrown into the mix. What else did It really do that made it stand apart from other horrors besides incorporate a dance number and use that kid from Stranger Things? It takes a traditional monster with some strange rules and then uses these monster mechanics to force each of its characters to grow. Or, stated another way, stress the hero's internal need. Now, normally when we have a story, the secondary characters put pressure on our hero's need, while the villain represents everything the hero could ever want, minus a soul or ethics. In a horror story, we lose that aspect of our villain, because the only thing that our hero wants is to stay alive, and the only thing our monster represents is a terrifyingly painful death. But It goes the extra mile and makes the clown work double time, serving as both a physical embodiment of murder in a tutu, but also the obstacle that forces our hero to recognize their need, a need to control their fears, and be strong for one another. Sometimes this aspect of a horror is called the Sins of the Father section, where we learn our character is being punished for something their family or society did wrong. But we're working with 12-year-olds in It, so it's not like they did anything wrong in the story yet. What is wrong is a society that neglects their children, and those same children struggling to realize that they need to take charge of their own lives in their fight for survival against carnies. In your own stories, look at what your hero needs to change or learn about life. Then, create a monster that makes the need a matter of life or death. It can only be unlived when the kids ignore their fears and bludgeon him with sewer trash. Ask yourself what this weakness could be in your own monster. Then ask what mystery or riddle can explain why this is your monster's weakness. Once you get that down pat, you'll have a meaningful enemy, not just a monster. You can then put that monster into a unique horror that blends comedy and other genres into its story. Finally, you can hide your monster in every scene, making them feel like an unstoppable force of nature so that even your audience feels their presence no matter where they go. But don't go anywhere yet, I got stuff for you to check out. That free plot planner link as well as some other useful tools are down in the description. Also, my book, which is not a horror, is on Amazon for less than a small coffee in Ethiopia. And if you're like me and can't read, support this channel by being in the 5% of viewers who subscribe. Thanks for watching.